Good morning. You're listening to Retake Our Democracy. It's a 30-minute weekly show that airs at 8:30 a.m. each Saturday morning on KSFR 101.1 FM, your Santa Fe public radio station. I'm Paul Gibson, the host of Retake Our Democracy. Today, I'm going to be speaking with newly elected Bernalillo County Commissioner Eric Olivas. Retake strongly endorsed Eric in this race, and for a variety of reasons, we're delighted with his win. We'll get to Eric in just a minute, but first, a few quick announcements. I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving break and got some rest, some food, some family, and had a good time, and that you're still enjoying the leftovers. Last week, I interviewed Alicia Shaw, campaign coordinator for Public Power New Mexico, a coalition collaborating to educate constituents and legislators of the economic and environmental benefits of local public ownership and management of Mexico. I want to remind you that if you're listening to the show while driving around today and you miss any of the show, you can watch the full YouTube recording of the show and any prior interview by going to retakeourdemocracy.org and clicking on Retake on the Radio in the lower right side of the homepage. You'll find YouTube recordings of all the previous shows listed in chronological order, so you can binge watch Retake on the Radio for free. How's that? Before we get started, I also want to acknowledge that we are conducting this show on stolen Tewa land. And we want to thank our Tewa neighbors for being such good stewards of the land. And I think we all need to learn from their stewardship and learn soon. We're out of time. One last announcement. On Wednesday, December 7th, that's next week, from 6 to 7:30, we will conduct our fifth Zoominar of the session. This one focusing on the work of a coalition of which Retake is a member, Public Power New Mexico. Public Power New Mexico, as I mentioned earlier, is working with legislators to introduce local choice energy in the 2023 legislative session. We've written a good deal about public power in our blog, so if you go to retakeourdemocracy.org, use our search engine, you can learn more about what public power is and what local choice energy is. We have organized an exciting panel to discuss this very transformational legislation. Our panelists include Senator Carrie Hamlin, who is sponsoring the legislation, Local Energy Aggregation Network Executive Director Allison Elliott, who will share with us how local choice energy programs have been implemented successfully across the country. Local Choice Energy Alliance Energy Democracy organizer Jessica Guadalupe Tovar will also be with us, and she will build on Allison's comments and detail the organizational hurdles to successful adoption and implementation of local choice energy. Public Power New Mexico campaign director Alicia Shaw will also be with us, and she'll outline what Public Power New Mexico is and how we are advancing legislation to create local choice energy. So go to retakeourdemocracy.org, click on Actions and Events in the homepage banner, and you'll find more information and a link to register for this event. Okay, so we're back. We had to take a quick break there. On Wednesday, December 7th, we're doing that Zoominar, and we hope you will join. In order to get information about it, you got to go to retakeourdemocracy.org, click on Actions and Events in the homepage banner, and you'll find more information and a link to register for this event. You must register to participate. Okay, so let's meet Eric. Welcome to the show, Eric.
Thanks for having me.
Sure. We had you on when you were campaigning, and now you're not quite a commissioner. When do you take office?
So the swearing-in ceremony will be January 1st at noon.
Oh, so no football for you.
No, sir.
No, sir. Okay, so I like to let guests introduce themselves, and since you are a new face in New Mexico politics, how about we start with you telling us just a little bit about you, your family, how you grew up, your hobbies, what lights your fire.
Yeah, I'm a native New Mexican, really going back 9-10 generations on my dad's side. I grew up in Albuquerque, but my family's from up in the Cuba, New Mexico area on my dad's side. I grew up just a block away from where I live now. I went to public schools. I went to UNM and got a master's degree there in biology, working on climate change and drought issues here in some of our native flora and fauna. After that, I went into business though. I'm an entrepreneur. I own a small landscaping and plumbing business, and I love working with my hands. I'm also known to do some hobby woodworking and all sorts of other tinkering and projects that I like doing. I just like solving problems and working with my hands. And I think that's part of what drew me into politics, really thinking about how you solve problems, how you get creative, and really just working hard. I grew up in an environment, my grandma was a small business owner, always working, thinking about helping people, and doing the right thing really was part of how I was raised. So I'm trying to bring that into what I'm doing now, and have tried to put that into everything that I've done in my life. A couple other things about me: I'm an avid backpacker and hiker. I've got two young dogs, brothers Oso and Sol. My wife Savannah is a public school teacher. She's a kindergarten teacher here in Albuquerque in APS. And then I've got my other family living close by. So Albuquerque is a really important place to me. New Mexico is my home, always will be, as will Albuquerque and Bernalillo County. So I'm really excited about this new opportunity and being able to kind of bring my background to the county commission.
Right, right. Sorry, how did you become involved in politics, and what motivated you to run for the Bernalillo County Commission?
So I've always been somewhat, I would say, civically informed. It was just part of how I was raised. My dad was a teacher, and it was just always part of what he was instilling in me, an interest in politics, this idea that if you're not involved, you don't really have any ability to influence the conversation. And it's sort of that saying that if you don't do politics, politics does you, right? So I think that's really where I started.
Let me steal that, Eric.
Yeah, right. That's the thing. So I think that as I got older in college, we had the James Boyd shooting and the APD settlement decree that started going on. And that really piqued my interest in getting involved and understanding these policing issues coupled with crime and homelessness, behavioral health, all these things that are interconnected. And so I started there working on the community policing councils and moved over to the oversight board. I was appointed there and really got educated on some of these issues and what's going on in our community with regards to crime and behavioral health and so many of these intertwined issues, substance abuse and addiction. And looking at it from that perspective, I realized that I needed to be somewhere else where I could have an impact. Bernalillo County is a huge player in the behavioral health space, in particular with the behavioral health initiative. It's the largest single revenue source in the state that's dedicated to behavioral health. And that's a huge issue. If you talk to anybody here in Albuquerque, and as I was on the campaign trail in Albuquerque and Bernalillo County, that's really the number one issue when you boil it down. People talk about homelessness, they talk about addiction problems and substance abuse, and all of that boils down at one level or another to behavioral health. So that's what got me involved in this. Of course, there's other issues that I'm passionate about as well. Like I said, my background in science and climate change, and I want to see local governments doing more to address this issue. If we work at this local level, I think we can really have an impact at a global level as we see this movement spread.
Okay, so what are the values that will guide your deliberations and decision making? What are your personal priorities that you hope to advance when you're in office?
That last question was a good lead into this. I think from the perspective of just who I am, I'm a small business owner, I'm a scientist, and I'm a native New Mexican. I think those are things that really guide me and ground me. My family just really instilled values of hard work and creativity coupled with critical thinking. I think that's all part of the job and part of how I'll approach this. We have to think outside the box, and we also have to work really hard and realize that these challenges we face are big. So behavioral health, crime, and substance abuse are all very intertwined, interconnected, and I'm passionate about trying to do something to solve those problems. From the perspective of our economy and workers and businesses, I think we've got to approach that from a more holistic standpoint. Too often we have this sort of industry versus workers. In my business, which I'm so thankful to have been, successful in my business. I haven't approached it from that direction. It's about all tides rising together. And that really starts with workers, making sure that workers are treated fairly and decently and paid wages that they can support their families on, buy homes, go on vacations, those kinds of things. That's what we have to get back to. And we need to see the government supporting that. And then really the third plank here is about conservation and environmental stewardship. Our county is going to play a key role as it has in the past in talking about our number one issue here in New Mexico, water, how we approach water and how we manage water, and making sure that that's coupled with land use planning. So and then that of course dovetails into other conservation issues, whether you're talking about climate change or regulation of pollutants and locating facilities where polluting facilities are located in the county. And controls on those. So I think there's a lot of work to do, and I'm really excited about the perspective that I think I'm going to be able to bring to the commission.
Well, it looks like you're going to be entering a commission that's very different in terms of the political fabric of the commission, with your win and with Barbara Baca's win. Can you talk a little bit about what the change in composition of the commission is going to look like and what that means for constituents?
Sure. I think first to start out, I'm really excited to work with Commissioner-elect Baca. We've got a number of great commissioners and elected officials that were just brought in. I'm really excited to work with Commissioner Barboa. I've been meeting with some of the other commissioners as well. And some of the other newly elected county officials we've got a new sheriff, John Allen, the sheriff-elect. We've got a new assessor. So I think we're really coming in with not a completely new team here at the county, but there's definitely a lot of fresh faces there, and I'm really excited to work with those folks. From the perspective of what that means for constituents, both in my district and throughout the entire county, I think that we're going to have a commission that's really grounded in values and really trying to make some good things happen for our community. Commissioner-elect Baca and I had the same campaign manager. We worked very closely together on the campaign trail in developing some of our policy priorities and talking points, that kind of thing. And I think that we're going to be able to work really closely together to implement some of those ideas, or at least try. And so I think from the difference from the current commission, as we've seen, especially in the last couple of weeks, I just think that we're going to have some really strong working relationships. And I think it really comes down to relationships are important, and just having that mutual respect and that shared value system is going to be really helpful.
I'm looking forward to seeing what happens, because like the city council in Albuquerque, the Bernalillo County Commission hasn't exactly been functional for a while. So I'm very excited about this. Okay, so last week we spoke, when I say we, I mean I spoke with the campaign director for New Mexico Public Power, Alicia Shaw, and in discussing public power, she mentioned you were a supporter of it, and that you were going to be introducing a resolution asking the commission to officially endorse local choice energy. Can you tell us why you support the legislation and how you feel it could benefit Bernco residents, and for that matter, residents of any county?
Yeah, so I think the really important thing about this is the end goal here, right? Which is decarbonizing our economy, our electric sector. That's the most important piece of this, I think, is getting to that root and that ultimate goal. We've got to be able to electrify our vehicle fleets. We've got to be able to electrify industry, homes, everything. And so I think getting to a zero carbon future obviously goes through our electrical generation system and our electrical delivery system. So as a county commissioner, I think it's critical that we focus on that goal and help get our communities to that real zero, not a net zero, but a real zero future. And so I think public power is important because it introduces the element of choice. Right now, you have a regulated monopoly, which I think is an improvement over some of the other monopolies we see, in, for example, Facebook, Amazon, which you can argue are unregulated monopolies. But I think that introducing elements of choice and allowing local communities to be able to chart their own future if they so choose. And I think that's an important piece of this is that this is not forcing anything on anybody, but rather this introduces, again, going back to that word I keep saying over and over, choice. This gives communities a choice, gives elected leaders in those communities a choice to have those conversations with their constituents and talk about how we get to that zero carbon future. And so I think it's an exciting opportunity to shake things up and introduce some competition in the electric sector and bring some new players to the field.
So given the new composition of the commission, do you anticipate much resistance to your resolution?
So I really don't want to handicap this too much in the fact that I'm a new commissioner and we're just getting to know each other here on the commission. I think that there's going to be some strong working relationships there, and I'm optimistic about where this could go and what kind of support we could get at the commission. But I just want to kind of, temper that with saying that I want to be able to work with my peers, and I would hope that they would support an idea that has the potential to get us to a net zero future a lot faster.
Fair. I mean, you don't want to rock the boat before you're even on it. So I need to take a quick break here to remind our listeners that KSFR is more important than ever, offering timely news and alerts and a wide range of programming to keep you informed and sane in these ever-changing and crazy times. In an era of misinformation is, as Eric mentioned, and Facebook and Twitter and everything is everywhere. And even on the mainstream media, that misinformation is horrible. So KSFR offers straight news. They offer you Amy Goodman with Democracy Now! Every day. We Take Our Democracy, Richard Wolf and Economic Update, which comes on just before our show. All of these things are delivered to you free. They do cost something. There's engineers at the radio station, there's a program manager, there's expensive equipment. And so those things need to be paid for. And so I want to ask you, I do this every week. When you get done listening to the show, go to ksfr.org and click on that donate button and give them 10, 20, 50 bucks. And view it as your ticket for admission to a lot of great programs. And thank you, KSFR, for all you do for our community. Okay. Let's get back to our discussion here. Are there any other bills or policies you're tracking that will be considered in the legislature in 2023?
Obviously, there's all kinds of things that are going through the legislature that I think are important to Bernalillo County and residents of the city and beyond. I'm really interested in some of the proposals around water, talking about increased funding for the Interstate Stream Commission, the Office of the State Engineer, some of the new powers and statute changes that need to happen there. We are just facing an incredibly dire future. I was going to use the word uncertain, but I think dire is really more right. And so I think that we've got to get serious, and I hope that we see the legislature get serious. I know there's a number of legislators that are working really hard on water issues and working very closely with those bodies that I mentioned, as well as other advocacy groups. But I think that I really do hope we see some progress on water. I know the governor's putting out her 50-year water plan, and I'm excited to see what's in there. But I think that water is really important. And of course, the Middle Rio Grande region, including Bernalillo County, the Albuquerque-Bernalillo County Water Authority, is a huge player in water resources in New Mexico. So I'm going to be paying close attention to that. Behavioral health, as I talked about earlier, I think is really important. And I hope that we see some investments at the state level. That was a system that was just absolutely gutted by the last governor and the last administration. And we really need to see some concerted effort. I think there has been some, credit where credit is due, but we need to see some real investments at the state level in that, because one of the things I talked about on the campaign trail is the need for us to all coordinate together. This is a statewide problem. It's certainly a regional problem, and we've got to have all the players at the table putting their resources in the pot together to tackle this problem. So I think that those are two areas I'm going to be watching very closely. And another one I'm going to mention that we always talk about is capital outlay. Of course, that is just, as I'm learning more and educating myself on this, that is just an incredibly convoluted process, to put it nicely, but it's also a really important process, especially in a year like this where revenue is off the charts. I was talking to, getting myself acquainted with some of our staff at the county. I mean, we have a $2 billion deficit just in our public works department when you talk about roads and improvements that need to be made there. And I don't just mean roads. We're talking about pedestrian improvements. We're talking about safety improvements for alternative modes of transportation like bicycle lanes and bike safety improvements. That's an incredible deficit, but that's also an incredible opportunity to make investments that are really transformative for our economy and for addressing some of the issues like pedestrian safety. So I'm going to be watching that process and probably very involved in lobbying on behalf of some of the projects that are important. Yeah, so when I was talking to our county manager's chief of staff, I was informed that there's roughly a $2 billion deficit. And keep in mind, this is just in the county maintained roads. So that doesn't include the city, which is most of Bernalillo County's road infrastructure is actually in the city. And another thing to keep in mind, though, even if the state was to suddenly give Bernalillo County $2 billion, which probably isn't going to happen, right? We don't have the staff at the county to actually process those projects and move forward. So it's really important, like going back to the water issue, we have to make investments in agencies and staff budgets so that we can actually advance projects if and when we get the funding to do them.
So one of the issues you're certainly going to face on the commission fairly soon is a vote to replace Estes in the House. The vote was elevated to the Senate to take Jacob Condolari the Senate seat just a couple of weeks ago. But now there's a vacancy in Loma Estes's House seat. Have you heard anything about any candidates, and what is the process for making that selection?
Yeah, so I think everybody's familiar with how ugly that process was in the last couple of weeks with everything that happened there with the Senate appointment. And during that process, the current commission passed a resolution that set forward a process, which is really not a process. It's really just a deadline that says the commission must make an appointment within 3 weeks of a vacancy. And so really right now, what we're looking at is 2 vacancies. There's a vacancy for the current House seat, which the current commission will need to fill by their own statutory guidelines that they just passed, because they have to fill that within 3 weeks. But I think it's important to keep in mind that my understanding on this is that is a seat that will no longer exist, right? On the 1st of January, we have a redistricting process that just happened, and those seats, those districts don't exist until the 1st of January. So there will be an appointment that will happen with this current commission for the current House seat, which is essentially a placeholder. And then the new commission, when it assumes office, my understanding, will then make another appointment to the new House seat. So I'm really not, I haven't had anybody contact me about that new House seat or filling that new House seat. But I know that there are a number of candidates that are talking about the current House seat, and I assume those will be candidates for the new one as well. So I think that there's a good pool of applicants, and I hope that folks continue to apply. And one thing I want to mention there that I think is important, in the appointment of the Senate seat, sort of a traditional respect has given towards the commissioner that overlaps with that district. And in this case, that would have been Debbie O'Malley. And in the new year after the first, that would be Commissioner Baca. And Commissioner O'Malley knows that district best, right? The current district, given that Those are the folks that she represents, and she's campaigned in that area, et cetera. And Commissioner Baca will be in that same situation. So from my perspective, I'm inclined to give a great deal of deference to the commissioner that knows that area best. I'm from Albuquerque. I grew up here, but I've never lived in those neighborhoods. I don't know those communities as well as that representative, which in my case, would be Commissioner Baca. So I'll definitely be very interested in listening to her and who she believes will represent that community best.
So we only have about a minute, but another vote we're going to have pretty soon is the Santolina, I believe. Can you tell us a little bit about that development and where, when you might have a decision to make at the Commission?
So I have to be careful with what I say about the Santolina project, because oftentimes the decisions that are brought before the commission are quasi-judicial land use questions where commissioners are expected to be neutral arbiters of the law and of the county code and ordinances that govern that land. But what I want to touch on is really the larger issue here, which is land use planning and coupling land use planning with water availability and water planning. That's really what this argument cuts to. Currently, the Santolina development does have an approved master plan with the county that was approved quite a few years ago, and they are proceeding with various changes, amendments, and developments on that parcel. So the county has a role in governing that process and that land use. So but from my perspective, what I think is most important is that we take that wider view out and talk again about land use planning and how we couple that with water availability. And I'm very concerned, as I was talking about earlier, about the deficit we have in infrastructure. That's infrastructure for already developed areas of our county and already developed areas of our community. And so I think it's important that we really make that distinction between redevelopment and investment in our communities that are already on the ground. And many of those communities have been really not invested in a long time. So I think it's important that we think about that as we consider development of any property within the county, new development, and the cost of that new development and infrastructure and other ways, and what that takes away from other regions of the county that need reinvestment and redevelopment.
Last question, how can constituents get in touch with you, Eric?
So I'm in the transition process right now, so I don't have an official county phone, email, all that kind of stuff that goes with actually being the commissioner. So really the best way to get a hold of me is send me an email. My email is the same one I used on the campaign. It's Olivas, OLIVAS, for Bernco. FOR is spelled out, FOR BERNCO, Olivas for Bernco @gmail.com. Shoot me an email. I'm always interested in hearing from folks, getting new perspectives. I find that I'm pretty accessible for setting up meetings, taking calls, that kind of thing. So I'm looking forward to hearing from folks and learning.
And I can attest to that. Eric is about the most responsive person I've ever worked with as a political candidate. Very easy to get in touch with. So I want to thank Eric for spending his time with us today. I think our listeners now have a better idea of why Retake so strongly endorsed him. Very thoughtful. We'll be back next week with another interview. So tune in at 8 a.m. instead of 8:30 and catch Richard Wolf with Economic Update from 8 to 8:30. And then stick around and listen to Retake Our Democracy, and you get an hour of progressive politics. And Richard Wolf is phenomenal. If you haven't listened to him, he is remarkable. And also don't forget to register for our Public Power Zoom on December 7th from 6 to 7:30. You must register to attend. And so to register, go to retakeourdemocracy.org, click on Actions and Events on the homepage, and you'll find it in the banner there. You'll find the information on the Actions and Events page. It's going to be a rich discussion of an important, even transformational piece of legislation. So you can find out more about what it is and how you can become involved in getting it passed in 2023. And thank you very much for being with us today. Stay safe, stay healthy, and most of all, stay active. It's the only way to fix this mess.